Check 1 2, check 1 2, test test test.
Sorry, thank you.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. We're just going to wait just a couple more minutes, see if more people join.
Okay.
Not that the group that is on isn't wonderful. I'm looking at Clint's room and I'm thinking, holy cow, how does he keep all that straight? Well, it's good that you do because it looks very interesting. Thank you, Clint. Good morning, everyone. We will officially start the meeting, and thank you, Miranda, for doing such a good job at taking minutes. And so those minutes were sent out from the May 24th meeting. If everybody had a chance to read them, if you have any additions, corrections, please state that. And then if not, we will have a motion to approve those. Does somebody want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
And that was Mary, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, this is Mark.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. Okay. So we have a pretty robust agenda. I don't think it'll take the whole time frame, but we certainly have allocated extra time just in case. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about, and we have turned this over to Allison, is the role of the Health Council post-merger. So as you know, the merger officially went into place for Department of Health and Human Services as of September 1st. And with that merger, our role did change somewhat. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Allison.
Good morning, everybody. So as you remember, back in March, I kind of did a state health council, I'll call it an orientation, where we talked about your makeup, your powers and duties, and then also how to vote, how to be a good board member, that kind of stuff. So I didn't create a PowerPoint for today because it would have been one slide, and that's somewhat pointless. So prior to the merger, and still, your powers and duties are set forth in North Dakota Century Code 230103. And previously, kind of the heavy lift of the Health Council was that you guys approved all the administrative rules. So anytime the North Dakota Department of Health wanted to promulgate administrative rules, those rules had to go through the Health Council. That power was removed from the Health Council. So now really there's a lot of places in the Century Code where it'll say the state health council will set standards. We regularly see that, whether it's a metabolic screening panel or other things, it's the state health council will set standards, but you don't have the authority to promulgate rules regarding those standards. So effectively what this has done is the state health council, as it relates to a lot of those standards and regulations, is much more of an advisory body now, as opposed to the active participant driving the rules and regulations of the Department of Health that you were pre-merger. So that's kind of the largest change for you guys. And it kind of takes a lot of the burden off of you. So then kind of the question becomes, well, if that kind of was removed, then what's left? And there's quite a bit left. So the big thing that you do, if you look in 230103, you still provide for the development, establishment, and enforcement of basic standards for hospitals. Again, though, they removed any ability to make rules there. So again, that's going to have to be kind of in an advisory capacity with the Public Health Division of NDD HHS. And then you're still going to be holding hearings if for some reason a license for a medical hospital gets denied, or if for some reason it would be revoked. That's fairly irregular. In fact, I don't know that it's ever happened recently. Otherwise, your big thing, and you'll see this from your agenda today, is the loan repayment programs. The loan repayment program, so we're talking about the healthcare professional student loan repayment program. That's codified in North Dakota Century Code Chapter 23-12.3. The veterinarian loan program, that's codified in 4329.1. The dentist loan repayment program, which is codified in 4328.1. And the long-term care nursing scholarship and loan repayment program, and that's in 230103.3. So you're still going to be responsible for basically developing the application criteria of those programs and kind of selecting who gets the program. But again, you don't have really the administrative rule authority anymore. So that's going to have to be much more of a partnership with the North Dakota Department of Health and Human Services and the Public Health Division. So a lot of the kind of substantive part of that, you're still very much involved in. You still create the application form. You still get to pick who gets the money. It's just that you don't have the ability to put it into law anymore. So again, it's kind of more of an advisory, and granted, your advice does get a level of deference, especially in reference to the loan repayment programs and stuff like that. But it's not the end all be all that it was previously. So it's a much more advisory capacity. And I think we'll talk a little bit today kind of about what your advice is on certain items related to the loan repayment program. But the loan repayment program is kind of going to be your heavy lift right now. So that's kind of where you're at. Does anyone have any questions for me about that? That was kind of a cursory overview, but we'll see it more in practice as we get into it. What does an advisory body mean? I know that's kind of just lip service right now, but we'll get more into it as we move forward. So does anyone have any questions about your role right now?
So that was a very good narrative. I guess the one question I have is that who do we then advise to? Who actually does the official lesson?
It's kind of the same, and someone from the Department of Health would probably be able to give you kind of more of the org chart. But my understanding is most of the divisions that you have been working with, so like you've been working with Kaylee on the loan repayment stuff. My understanding is you'll still be working with Kaylee on that stuff. So basically you're giving your advice to the North Dakota Department of Health, except now it's the Public Health Division of NDDHHS. So it's the same people, it's the same, like there's no one really new on the call. It's the same thing. It's just the structure internally may be a little bit different, but my understanding is your point persons for all of these things will likely remain the same.
And would they in turn come to us to ask for our advice? You know, like maybe, or, I mean, would it work both ways?
It kind of works both ways. So I think if they're having a problem and they just kind of want to get an input, like you guys are still an advisory council. So if they want advice, they will certainly ask you for it. Otherwise, if there's something that you see, like, hey, the loan repayment program does this, but I would really like to see this criteria added because I think it's important. Or, hey, there's not really so much of a shortage in this other thing right now. We'd like to see that phased out or something like that. You can still bring it up. Again, it's just advisory, so it's not really binding. But either party can, not parties because you're not on the opposite sides of anything, but anyone can bring it up. They can ask you for things and you can ask them for things.
Well, and in essence as well, this is Daryl, any body or any group can provide information back or act as an advisory role to Health and Human Services for them to consider things. So maybe we are a formal body, but we have no additional authority than the normal North Dakotan providing feedback back to the Health and Human Services, correct?
No, I would disagree with that. So you're in statute. That means the legislature wants you to do things. Like the legislature wants your input to mean things. And especially like with the loan repayment programs where it says the state health council shall set the criteria. That means they want you to give that advice, and then your advice does garner a bit of deference. The people kind of across the state, the public citizens, they can certainly always provide input and comment. It's just that deference part of it, because in the statute, the legislature felt that it was necessary that you weigh in on those things. And so it's not the same. It might be similar stuff that's being brought up, but Joe Schmo, member of the public's thoughts do not get as much weight and deference as the State Health Council, especially on those issues that the legislature has specifically asked that you weigh in on.
And Mark has his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. So you said that we no longer have, so previously we set standards and then also had some role in establishing what the rules are, whereas now now we have no authority to either set standards or promulgate rules to implement those standards. So now who does that in our place?
The Public Health Division of the Department of Health and Human Services. Now, I just kind of want to dial this back because there's a couple of things that you said. So promulgating rules means this is what the rules are going to be, and we're going to go through the process to set them. Drafting the rules, creating the rules, though, is different. So the health department, if they're like, say Kaylee is working on administrative rules related to the loan repayment program, she can ask for your input. You can give your advice, you can give your opinion on that. It's kind of up to you guys in the health council, or you guys and the public health division, to kind of figure out where those boundaries are. Like, how much input do you guys want to have on the criteria? And again, unlike before, it's not going to be related to everything. It's going to be related to the specific things that you are listed in statute. So the loan repayment program, and then there's a couple of stragglers throughout the Century Code that are related to kind of other things like electrolysis, like for hair removal, that kind of stuff. So there are certain things that you'll be more involved in, but before, you literally saw every single administrative rule that came for the department, and you had to approve those rules. Now that is not the case, but you will still work with the department in the promulgation or the creation of the administrative rules related to the things that you are still listed in Century Code. So you're not entirely cut out of the process. You do still get to help set the criteria and that kind of stuff. It's just the final say on what goes in the rules lies with the Public Health Division of NDDHHS.
Okay, any questions? Would there be opportunity just to let us know changes in advice, just so in case people contact us, so besides the things that the loan repayment, I guess what I'm trying to say is, let's say there's a change to the marijuana program and it's going to be changed in administrative rule. Would there be a chance to at least let us know what some of those changes are, even though we don't have a say, just so we're more in the loop? Or is that kind of not even a thing either?
I mean, you guys can work with the public health division. Like, if it's just an FYI, I mean, if you want to hear a presentation on the upcoming changes to the medical marijuana administrative code, I certainly think you can ask. But what won't happen, which is what would happen before, is you can't say, we don't really like those rules. Like, you cannot like the rules and they can still move forward with them. So you can receive whatever information that you want. So if you want presentations on things from the public health division, you just have to ask them. It's not set in statute that you don't get any information, that you're entirely cut out of things. It's just who they shifted, who has the decision-making authority.
I think what I've heard, Allison, over the course of what you've been talking about is it is possible for them to do these things. They are just no longer required to.
Exactly.
So and we could ask them to say, hey, we'd like an update, and they could say, no, we don't really want to. So that's one of the things is it, because it's no longer a requirement, it is also something that they could just, if they were not wanting to be cooperative or not wanting our input, they would just say no.
Exactly. You guys have to figure out what your new relationship is. Like, it's going to have to be more of a cooperative, collaborative thing, as opposed to previously Century Code set the rules. Here's the things that have to come here. And so now it's got to be much more of an amicable, which it was amicable before, but it's got to be more of a request type of relationship. And you guys get to set that. You guys get to work with the public health division. You guys get to figure out what you want to hear and what you don't want to hear anymore. That's up to you guys.
And that would be through Dr. Wiebe, or how would, is that
I'm
going to be
going
our?
to leave that up to members of the public health division who may be on this call who want to answer that question. Dirk raised his hand.
Okay, Dirk, thank you.
I always came to answer questions. Yeah, I think it could be either or, Dr. Wiebe or myself. I think we'd be more than happy to have ongoing conversations about what you guys want to hear, what you want to see. I don't think it's our intention to cut the health council completely out of the process, because that kind of defeats the purpose of an advisory board.
And I guess I'm struggling with, do we have enough purpose to justify the continuation of the existence of this group? I understand it's in code, we have some requirements, but is there enough for us to really feel like we're having any meaningful
And I think that's the reason I'm asking these questions as well, because I've been getting comments outside of this group like, well, why are you even going to be doing this anymore? Or what's the purpose? Or, if it's loan repayment program, is that really a big deal? Yeah.
And even before the merger, I have felt over the course of my however many years I've been on this now, 6 or something like that, kind of a drift from feeling like we had a true purpose. And Daryl, I don't know if you would, you've probably been on here the next longest with me. I can't remember if you started before me or right after me, or we started up right at the same time. But I just, I feel like we've kind of been a rubber stamp for a while. We've kind of been yep, okay, that's interesting, that's new, but I don't really have anything to say about that because it was just an informational presentation, or, even sometimes the administrative rule process became very like, okay, well, I don't know this process well enough to be able to say if that's good or bad anyway. So.
And I know Dirk had his hand up real quick. So Dirk, I don't know if you had a comment to that.
Well, I have comments to everything, unfortunately. So I would say that obviously, Kristen, we would never want to have a board that doesn't feel like they're making an impact or making a difference. But once again, and I defer to Allie, this is really not a change that we could make if the board, so that would have to be a legislative change that would have to
I know, and I'm aware of that. I just wanted to have the bigger philosophical conversation to say, do we need to A, find a new purpose, or B, recommend dissolving the group? That's kind of, to me,
Okay.
the decision that we need to make today.
Yeah,
Or, you know,
perfectly
over the
understood.
course of our
Yeah,
future.
that makes sense. I just want to make sure that wasn't something that we as public health can do or anything along those lines. So just wanted to make that clear.
So Daryl, you had your hand up next, and then Mark.
So I totally agree with Kristen on this one, because before it seemed like we had very limited role and purpose. And since the changes in that came with the merger, it seems like we have even less. So unless we have more defined specific purpose, I don't see a lot of role for us as a group. You know, it certainly would be nice to get back to the original intent of the Health Council from years ago, which is to really provide substantive input from North Dakotans as different rules are developed. But it seems like we're not there.
And thanks, Daryl. Mark?
Yeah, I'm wondering if Dr. Wiebe could also respond to this, because one of the issues is, you know, the relationship between Dr. Wiebe as our state health officer and now Dirk's role as executive director. And I'm wondering if Dr. Wiebe could also share what your thoughts are about the role that we would or should play. And I know our agenda allows for this perhaps on item 7 a little bit, but I would love to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah,
Not to a specific question, but just to the general question of our role and our relationship to the Department of Health.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. So first, your first part of the question was more related to my role with health or health and human services. And as the integration happened, my role is kind of like removed from the day-to-day operations of the various verticals or various operations within HHS. So HHS has already had 3 operative verticals, which is Medicaid, economic assistance or human services, and the third was behavioral health. And the 4th vertical that was added is public health, which used to be Department of Health. So operation-wise, day-to-day operations, that goes and funneled through the Commissioner of Health and Human Services. My role transitioned to become more visionary leadership, strategic presence that spreads all over the department. So not only specific to public health, but all over the Department of Health and Human Services. Of course, with the understanding and recognition that as a state health officer, maybe the interaction will be more robust or more frequent and substantive with the Division of Public Health, because there is kind of like common clinical knowledge that is needed at that level. But also I would be interacting with behavioral health, with economic assistance, with Medicaid as needed. There are additional responsibilities and role aspects that I can delve into very briefly, which are more focused on tribal engagement. They are focused still on legislative interaction and engagement, as well as testimonies as needed, partnerships and collaborations with various cabinet agencies within the state government, as well as looking at health and wellness, not only for DHHS, but eventually for the whole state, which is, again, based on the concept, Mark, that you are aware of and everyone is aware of, making North Dakota the healthiest state. So that's kind of like that transition, that kind of like few of the changes that happened to my role. So as Dirk mentioned earlier, that if, having the Health Council as an advisory board, this will have interaction with the Division of Public Health, as well as with myself, and either or would work. We, like Dirk and I, communicate as we used to communicate previously, so we are always on the same page. The second part of the question, which is related to what could be the role of the Health Council in the future, or interaction with DHHS, or Division of Public Health, and eventually the goal of North Dakota becoming the healthiest state. So again, we'll go back to, I'll use what Allison was trying to kind of like explain to us, which is kind of like this relationship will be based on cooperation and collaboration. And then we have to define that relationship, like if we are seeking some input, we as State Health Officer, as Division of Public Health, as Department of Health and Human Services, we might go reach out to various stakeholders to kind of like collect or seek input, seek advice, seek kind of like some thoughts or innovative ideas of how we can accomplish or implement specific initiatives that will eventually work towards having North Dakota the healthiest state. So what this could look like, I think it would be up to us to decide this kind of interaction, this collaboration, this cooperation, and work together on the flow of information one way or the other.
I think that will be helpful, as at least until, if there's a decision down the road, which isn't going to happen overnight or whatever, to get rid of this group. But for now, I think that's what we're hoping. We're hoping that we at least have that confirmation that we won't just be left sitting over here doing nothing, which is part of the reason we're going to have set meetings. And so, just to continue and actually build on the relationship with you guys at the state, and making us feel like maybe we do have some input, whether it's just advice or not, I think is going to be really critical as we go forward. And one of the reasons we want to set meetings is to, maybe it's a short agenda, but again, to have this interaction with the state and to feel like, we have a reason to have these meetings. Yes, Dr. Weeby.
Yeah, so I just want to reiterate, and I know Dirk already mentioned that, but it's kind of like the Century Code still states the presence and the existence of the State Health Council. We as the executive branch, we are not trying to venture into territory that we are not supposed to. So as long as the legislature are telling us there is a State Health Council, then we will take the State Health Council and we'll try to incorporate or work on that relationship, so then we are following the letter of the law. If there are, so then it would be up to the legislature at large, as well as to the State Health Council committee or members, to see, assess, and decide whether the role that they play is important and critical enough, or whether there could be other ways that they have input and interaction with DHHS at large or Division of Public Health, and that might not really require a State Health Council to be stated in the Century Code. So we understand that we are executive branch. We just follow the letter of the law, but other assessment, other kind of like thoughts of what this role could be would be left to the State Health Council, to the legislature. But on our part, no matter what the legislature decide, we will find a workable relationship.
Thank you. Any other comments on that? Kristen has her hand up.
I was trying to be good and actually use the hand raising instead of just speaking up like I normally do. So Dr. Weeby, I guess one of the things I'd like to hear from you is, having worked in other states and having seen how things work, outside of North Dakota, are there any things that you think would help the, Division of Public Health to be more effective, to help get, kind of that community input? There's a reason why some people are required to be from specific things that are on this group. Like, do you have some things in mind that you think that we could take on that would make us an effective group? Just to help us get some ideas of what this could be.
Yeah, thanks, Senator Rhodes. I'm kind of like thinking, what would always be helpful is when we seek advice, feedback, input from a kind of like a group of stakeholders, as big, as wide as possible, because this would inform the Division of Public Health and all of the Department of Health and Human Services in the actions and the plans that they want to take. I think we are at a good point where, we try to seek those stakeholders in order to get the feedback and input. Interestingly enough, the consistency of this State Health Council reflects our stakeholders that we always reach out to when we are trying to implement or effect any initiative, whether it's local public health, whether it's legislators, whether it is university, whether it is community, whether it's business, whether it is other providers and physicians. So I'm kind of like trying to think of, well, how do we, for sure we would love to get the input and the feedback from the Health Council, but then we have kind of like to have a practical and workable process.
And I think that's been the challenge in the past is the timeliness.
Right. So like if we want, let's say, to seek some input on something that we are doing, we cannot, maybe we can solicit the input and receive it from the council members individually rather than waiting 6 months for a council to meet and then provide the input. So maybe we have to kind of think of a way that will be more seamless and practical for our purposes as well as for yours, because I recall last time the meeting that we didn't have quorum. We had to wait a little bit till we met quorum requirements. So is there a good way or a better way to seek that input and capture the input that will not be as taxing to everyone?
Well, and I think, Allison, maybe this is a question for you. How does that then mesh with the open records laws? And I know that like in the past, we've had to be careful how much we did via email because of that.
Well, that's exactly it. You would still have to have meetings. You can't meet by email. So we can't send out a problem, say, hey, can we have your input on this? And then have people firing emails back, because that's considered a serial meeting. So you would still have to have meetings, which then would have the cost and expense of having meetings associated with it, which is why people hate having a full-blown meeting for certain things. And they only want to have one if they have enough stuff to talk about. So really just seeking advice through email isn't going to work.
And when we get to the part about meeting frequency, my recommendation is going to be at least quarterly, even if it's a short meeting. I think we have an opportunity while this exists to build on, to work together and build on the things that are being changed. And again, reassessing how things may go in the future, but we have an opportunity to work together and, with updates or, requests or such, trying to make ourselves be more part of the conversation. And then if that doesn't work, then again, we got legislators on, so we can, see what the next direction is. Yes,
So I
Dr.
raised my hand and I'll go ahead. And that's a good point, Sherry, because that's something that maybe, and that's up for the Health Council members to assess, because there is a legislative session around the corner. And, like if it takes too long to assess the value and the benefit that the council could provide, then you have to maybe struggle for 2.5 years before the next or the following legislative session, if a decision or if the thought is, well, maybe we have to restructure it or change it from a legislative state health council to something else. So I think it behooves everyone to kind of like think and see how we can at least tentatively think of the interaction and the collaboration and the cooperation between DPH, Division of Public Health, Health and Human Services, State Health Officer, and the State Health Council.
Thank you. Mark?
Can I recommend that we devote a significant amount of time at our next meeting to developing this issue and focusing on what is our role, what is it that the Division of Public Health, wants from us, and what would we like to offer to them, and vice versa. It feels as if we need to make sure that we don't allow, assumptions or prior experiences to dictate both attitudes and behavior. And I think it's important that we root it in facts and truth regarding both, what does Century Code say we are? So we need to be anchored there. But then there also, according to Allison, is lots of room for flexibility to then determine, what does that mean? What does that look like operationally? Well, that comes down to the relationship that we choose to have with the Division of Public Health and vice versa. And to me, a spirit of collaboration and an unswerving devotion to representing the people of North Dakota is the spirit we want to bring to that conversation. So I'd like to recommend that we make the majority of our next meeting focused on this question.
Can I ask
because
when that?
then we have, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm tentatively going to recommend quarterly meetings, and the next one would be like January 5th. And I know that's not going to work for you. So we could
I'm
also.
worried that's actually too late.
Oh,
Because
okay.
you have to have the bill drafted, and the last date to propose a bill.
Okay.
is
Oh, you mean,
middle of
okay.
January. So I still want to have the conversation. I just don't want us to get to a point where we're having the conversation and there's nothing.
And we could actually, like, with November 3rd, does that work for Dr. Wiebe and Dirk and most of you? That's a month from today.
This is Allison. I personally will not be able to make that. I'm in a seminar in San Diego from the 3rd through the 5th. But I agree with Senator Roars. You need to have this discussion sooner rather than later, because additionally, whatever ideas you guys come up with, somebody has to draft it. Somebody's got to run it by Chris. There's additional steps that are going to need to be taken. So sooner rather than later is better.
What would that when you think of a document that needs to be reviewed?
A bill. A bill.
Oh, I see.
Like someone's got to someone's going to have to go through the Century Code and put the words on the paper that do the thing that you want it to do. And
well, what works best for Allison, Kristen, Dr. Wiebe, Dirk, as far as in November, or end of the month or whatever? Because you guys are going to be valuable players, at least in this. I'm not saying nobody else is a valuable player, but
I personally, I don't have anything scheduled the second week of November, the 6th through the 12th, so I can make anything work.
Dirk, Dr. Wiebe, the rest of you guys?
Just an election day in there.
No big deal.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm at APHA in Boston from the 6th to the 9th. And so it'd be really hard.
Could we do the 10th? Would you be back?
Sort of, physically. Yes, that would be
Dr.
okay.
Weedy is at that same conference. He's not free until the 14th and beyond.
Who is that?
Dr. Weedy.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, we can kind of like maybe work out things 10th or the following week should.
Okay.
Miranda can send out like a scheduler,
Yep, that would work.
whatever thing.
Yeah, just know that the 15th, 16th are legislative council, so I'm hit and miss on those days, but I could probably make something work.
I think the first 2 weeks would probably be more important. Then you're getting into Thanksgiving and you're getting into all these other things, so.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Miranda will send a schedule out. Based on that meeting, we'll determine future meetings, I guess, as well.
Is there something you want us to do, Sherry, to kind of prepare for that meeting? So
Well, I think, is there some way Miranda could send out the actual century code? I mean, I could look it up too, but it might be easier if it was sent out that we could review. And then I'm not good at writing bills or drafts or any of that stuff.
Legislative council will do that. We just have to
Okay.
give them the ideas. They'll make it.
Okay, excellent.
Speak. We just.
But if we
need-
could all, if this group can all at least look at it and then do some thinking between now and then as to ideas that you want for the health council, or if you don't want the health council, or, you know what I mean, those kind of inputs I think are going to be really important to bring forward to this meeting. I would schedule, if we can, at least 3 hours. Because kind of going with Mark, we would do that. It would have to be an official meeting, so we would have to still do any agenda items. I see Miranda has a question.
Oh, no, sorry, my hand is still up from before.
And Mark, do you have another question? Okay,
No, I think if I had a question, it was, I hope somebody can restate, maybe Madam Chairwoman, if you could restate what it is we have decided is our next step when we're done with this conversation.
Allison?
I was just wondering if it would be helpful, usually for my other state agencies, when we're kind of doing a mass overhaul like this, if you want me to pull all of the century code references that refer to the state health council, and like you had asked if Miranda can send it out, because there's much more than just 230103. So if you want me to send that out so that we're all working from the same page, if that would be helpful.
Yes, that is exactly what I was hoping. And I think, Mark, for the overview, I think we have two things to discuss at that meeting. One is whether or not we want to draft a bill that this group goes away. I mean, that's one thing. Or two, based on all the things that this is also an opportunity to either put in that we have more that we can add to this group or whatever. So it's an opportunity to maybe change the wording a little bit to see what we can do or can't do, but whatever. I think that's the direction that we want to look at first. I mean, I don't want to just get rid of the group if we have opportunity to be able to adjust what our role is and then be able to use this as an opportunity to enhance the healthiest state of North Dakota. Yes, Daryl.
Well, in addition to that, and I think that is spot on, but in addition to that, to really see if there are specific things that DHHS would like us to do that may not have been thought about when this whole merger thing was developed and that legislation was developed. But then also, if Senator Roars could maybe get some feedback from her peers to see what does the legislature want us to do as well. And if we have all of that different information, then we can make a more informed recommendation than at our next meeting.
That is great. Thank you so much for adding that input. And then Allison again.
So I just want to clarify, you guys don't really have the authority, because you're not a state agency yourselves, to draft a bill. It has to go through DHHS. So You can again advise that this is what you would want it to do. This is what you would want the bill to say, but it can't go straight from health council to you guys. We need to make sure everybody's on board. And I know Dirk has his hand raised, so he might have different thoughts, but I just kind of want to caution that.
But I'll state that assuming I win my reelection, I'm more than willing to be the prime sponsor and carry the bill. So I absolutely will do that for our group.
Dirk?
Senator Roars, who I assume will win, gave the answer I was about to say.
Excellent. And yes, no, this is good. This is good. I mean, I'm assuming everybody still kind of wants to have this group if there's a role that we can play, I guess, but that will be, those things are things we want to think about. Hopefully we'll meet sometime the first 2 weeks of November to be able to come up. This is a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity to, as things are changing, it's always a good thing to look at it as an opportunity, not as something that is just gone.
Yeah, absolutely. To be as effective as we can be. I don't want to meet just to meet. So let's figure out what are those things that we can do to be really effective, to be of assistance to Dr. Weavy, to help give any direction that we can, but not be a hindrance to the department as well. You know, like how do we walk that line of you know, being able to give the input when it's time to give the input, but not having to have them wait on things that might be time sensitive because we're in the way. So I just want to make sure we're finding that balance there.
Thank you. What do others think that are on the council? Do any of you others have any comments? Okay, just want to give everybody an opportunity. So very good discussion. I think it's very good timing. I think it's going to be really important. Again, it's a new opportunity. So thank you. So we'll get that set up. We'll work with Miranda and her group to see if we can get a time. All right. So we've kind of brought forth a couple other the topics. So we'll go to the next agenda item, which is the state loan repayment program, which is one of the things that we do. So we're going to talk a little bit, and then we'll go down just a little bit and we'll have Mark bring up the idea about another thing that we're thinking to add public health as part of that program. So first I'll turn it over to Kelly and Kaylee.
Good morning, Chair Adams and members of the council. I'm Kelly Nagel, the Director of Systems and Performance with the department, which is where the primary care office is located. And I have Kaylee Werner with me. She's the primary care office manager. And we will be providing information on the state healthcare professional loan repayment program and provide some recommendations. The eligible disciplines under the healthcare professional loan repayment program include the physicians, the advanced practice providers, the behavioral health providers, dentists, and psychologists. And as Kaylee will be presenting in a little bit, there has been growth in the loan repayment program. And with that, there has been an increase in awardees requesting changes in practice sites or other contract agreements. And then the applicants are asking more eligibility questions, which we either need to determine whether the changes and responses conform to Century Code. And so we've been going to Allison quite a bit. We need to have some State Health Council approval. And as you know, Century Code is vague and not well defined. And so due to the vagueness of the Century Code and the need for State Health Council approval, we would need State Health Council to meet frequently enough to approve the changes. So there's some timely requests, responses to these requests, or a process in place to respond to these needs. And Allison has kind of indicated that that might be challenging. And then also, how do we assure consistency or standardization in the response or interpretation of the law? Allison has recommended that we do develop administrative rules to better define some of the common questions or issues. And then, so I'm just gonna mention some of the things that have been brought forward to Allison. In the healthcare professional loan payment Century Code, there is a statement in there which indicates willing to provide services in areas of the state that have a defined need for services. So how is the need for the healthcare professional specialty within an area defined? Well, obviously this needs to be defined in administrative rule. Then also, who is allowed to match? Most of the time, it's generally should be from a city or an employer, so that would show buy-in from the community. But can it be from an individual's business? I know we've had an individual business in a couple of instances where we've had issues with that. So if this is something that the council would advise or we should prohibit, that also should be put into administrative rule. There was also questions regarding licensure. If the program would allow for individuals that currently have a restricted license, this also should be the discretion of the council or should be decided by rule. So there's been quite a few kind of common issues and questions that we obviously need to put into a rule. So how would the State Health Council like to be involved in the rule development process? So those are things that you were recommending to be brought forward and for you to consider. But while you're thinking on that, I want to turn it over to Kaylee because she has a lot of information to provide on the data and to show you how we've had some challenges that have come forward and a lot of growth. And so, Kaylee, you're up.
I'm just going to share my screen here so you can see the PowerPoint slide that we have put together. Let me know. Hold on here. Okay. Let me know when you can see this. You guys see this?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna get back here. So we put together this graph, which is really nice. It shows we went back to 2019. So starting in 2019 to 2022. So you can see kind of the applications. For 2019, we had 10 physicians, we had 7 advanced practice, we had 15 behavioral health, and we had 7 dentists, no psychologists. So then these were the slots that were awarded. We had 3 physicians, 3 advanced practice, 3 behavioral health, 12 behavioral health, and 3 dentists. So the program continues to grow. And this last year, we had the largest number of behavioral health applications that we've seen. So we saw 6 physicians, 19 advanced practice, which includes your NPs and your PAs. Then we had 74 behavioral health, 4 dentists, and 4 psychologists. So of this group, we had 3 physicians awarded, 3 advanced practice, 13 behavioral health, 3 dentists, and 2 psychologists. We kind of broke it out. As Kelly was mentioning, we have had a lot of defaults in the last couple of years. And so we kind of did an overall count by discipline. So since 2019, we've had 3 physicians default, meaning that they've ended their contract before their service obligation was complete. So 3 physicians default, 4 advanced practice, 9 behavioral health, 1 dentist, and 1 psychologist. And we broke it out by year so you could see in 2019, we had 3. In 2019, we had 1 physician, 1 advanced practice, 1 behavioral health, and 1 psychologist. In 2020, we had 1 physician, 1 advanced practice, 3 behavioral health, and then 0 for dentists, 0 for psychologists. 21, we had no physicians. We had 1 advanced practice, no for behavioral health, and then the rest were 0. And then in this last year, in 2020, we had 1 physician, 1 advanced practice, and we had 5 behavioral health and 1 dentist. So we're seeing more defaults this year, particularly in behavioral health. And this is the breakdown for Kelly was mentioning. We're seeing a lot of movement across the practice locations. So where they're applying and where they're receiving loan repayment, they're not often staying. So we've had a lot of movement to new practices within their contract. So this is the count from 2019 to 2022. So we've had 3 physicians move, 1 advanced practice, 8 behavioral health, and 3 dentists. And again, the breakdown by year. So you can kind of look over and see in 2022, we had 5 behavioral health professionals move practice sites in the last year. So that's kind of hopefully a picture of, let me see if I can stop sharing my screen here. A picture of kind of what's happening with our loan repayment programs. you can kind of see that, we're seeing a lot of movement in the last year. So kind of wanted to bring that forward so you can kind of see the trends that we're seeing. I think we've seen a default or two every year. We've seen some practice site movement, but this last year has been particularly high for behavioral health and some of the other disciplines as well. So just wanted to share that.
I think in part that's also reflective of what's happening in our society. So I'm not surprised that the numbers are higher because everybody's stressed and burnout, and particularly in behavioral health. So there's people leaving the fields in general. So thank you for that. Any questions on that part? Mark, you have your hand up again?
Yeah, you went through those slides. I was noticing the number of behavioral health changes, but then how many awardees were behavioral health? Can you re-share your slides just briefly and show the number of applicants and the number of, awardees just for a sec?
Sure. Let me get back to my screen here. Okay.
So
here is I think the slide you're wanting.
Yes, indeed. So with 13 behavioral health awardees, 5 out of 13 is about half. With 3 physician awardees, 1 out of 3 is nearly half. So the alarming number of behavioral health either defaults or moves is actually in relatively consistent proportion to the number of awardees. So I guess I just want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly. Now, could you advance a couple of slides?
Sure.
Yes, so defaults, right. So, okay, back one. Right, so I guess 9 defaults is actually more than, but this is over the whole time. So what I'm saying is 9 defaults out of how many awardees in behavioral health compared to, say, 3 physicians out of how many physician awardees in relatively speaking, because the number of awardees in behavioral health has been about twice the number of all others for several years running. Mm-hmm. So I guess I want to make sure that we don't be too, we want to be sure and use facts to determine whether in fact behavioral health is responsible for, an excessive number of either defaults or moves. Just wanted to make sure that I'm clear on understanding.
Yes, no, those are very good points.
Thank you, Mark. Kaylee's presenting, so it's okay. Sometimes you get stuck in there.
Thank you.
I know, I'm like, oh my gosh.
There you go. Okay, so that's a good point, Mark. I'm glad you brought that up. We'll go back to Kelly. If you want to go through some of the questions that you mentioned, maybe one at a time, so we could do a little bit more input on some of that.
Yes, so the question is, how our relationship would be in getting responses and some of the questions that we get on specifically like the change in practice sites or change in contract agreements. Like, for example, I think Kaylee has one now that she needs to bring forward to you to be, I guess, timely and responsive to our awardees. We need to do that in a timely manner. And then the second one is if we move forward on the administrative rule changes or adoption, development of that, how do you want to be involved? How should we be working with you in developing those to get your advice and input?
Thank you, Kelly. So part of the reason, again, depending on what we decide with this group and how we want to go forward, but part of the thing was to have more frequent meetings, but I didn't know if 3 months is going to be frequent enough. If you're saying it has to be accepted sooner, it sounds like Allison is saying at this point, we have to have a formal meeting for those kind of comments. Am I correct on that?
Yes, in order to comply with the open meetings, open
Yeah.
records.
Yeah. So that will be something we'll have to figure out as far as like how quickly when you get one of these things in, what is the time frame that you need to get an answer? Is it a month? Is it 2 months? Is it like tomorrow?
Kaylee, you might need to respond. I would think Kaylee might have more idea if she looks back kind of on the trends, like when the application period is, when that's opened. I know that's when she gets a lot of the application eligibility questions, and then the contract period when they are first being awarded. There is a lot of questions. So, I mean, if she comes up like more of a timeline, she might be able to give you that.
I think that would be helpful so that we can schedule the meetings more consistent. Like if it's June and December, you know what I mean? We can maybe figure out the meeting timeline a little better if we know when the majority of your questions come in. So that would be something going forward once we figure out this next meeting and then next steps that we could hopefully work on. Does that make sense?
So-
I feel like
Yeah, I can certainly provide you with a timeline. I know just kind of quickly, we get a lot of those questions, of course, during the application cycle, which normally opens in November and or December each year, and will run through March. So a lot of questions, heavy questions, a lot in February and March as they're kind of wrapping up their applications and have kind of the final touches. The second kind of large is when we start to send out verification statements to our current awardees asking for some updated information. So we get a lot of questions on site movement at that time. We might find out that they've moved a site. And so then we have to go ahead and ask the State Health Council for approval of that site before we can apply payment. So we see a lot, I would say, kind of in the spring would be the most, the heavy time for those types of questions.
And that is very helpful. So as we go forward, you know, obviously trying to hit that time frame. And if we meet more frequently, even if they're shorter meetings, I think consistency is going to be one thing we hope from this group, that we can have more of a set time so that more people can schedule for one thing, but that we can also be more in the loop as things go forward. And again, more will be determined after that late October, November meeting. And Kelly, what was the second question or the second thing? Oh yeah, going forth with administrative rule. So I think, and I guess you're being called Allie. I've been calling you Allison, but Allie. So some direction that we have, just guidance or advising you guys for the administrative rule. I think if you, Kelly, you want to address those couple questions, like I think one was restricted licensing, kind of business. I think we can obviously, if you have those questions, we can give you suggestions, what we think, as you put that in administrative rule, if that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so whenever you do your administrative rule, if it's in the time frame of a meeting or whatever, I mean, I think there's a lot, especially the ones that have been on this council for a long time, they would have pretty good input, you know. So, and a good overview. Any comments, any of that? Okay, and then Kaylee, you had something that had to be approved today, is that correct?
I do. I have an individual that is currently working as a licensed addiction counselor. She also has her license or her bachelor in social work. She's currently pursuing a master's in social work and will be completing internship hours. Her internship hours are not at the facility that she was originally awarded at, but she will be, it is a paid internship that she will be completing the full-time workload. So we would need approval that she could continue to stay in loan repayment, given that she's now completing internship hours instead of, you know, full-time work, even though it is, she's but she's pursuing another degree, and it will be at a different site.
Is it a loan repayment where they had to have a match from the employer?
Yes,
Anyway.
yeah, and the employer has agreed. We'll have to send the MOU. Yes, I don't have the MOU in hand, but she did tell me that the employer has agreed to be the match. So they will pick up the remainder of her match.
I guess from my perspective, she's still serving a need in a very underserved area, and so I don't have a problem with the transfer to the. So I would move that we approve.
Thank you so much. Is there a second?
I'll second that. This is Daryl.
Thanks, Daryl. Any other discussion or questions? Okay, I think, Miranda, we do a roll call vote. Is that correct, Ally? Yes, okay.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be great.
Sure. Sherry Adams,
Yes.
Daryl Birch,
Yes.
Dr. Churchill. I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Yes.
Mary Gumke, Kristen Roars,
Yes.
and Dr. Strand.
Yes.
That's 6 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Thank you, Miranda. Anything else from Kelly and Kaylee?
No, thank you so much.
Great. So we're going to kind of pigtail this with Dr. Strand Mark's idea of putting public health in a loan repayment program, which I totally support. So I guess we'll turn it over to you, Mark, to lead that. And then how would we go about doing the next steps with this? So I'll turn it over to you first.
Thank you. And I obviously would lean on Kelly, and she's already been a big help in crafting verbiage to this end. So Kelly, please, be engaged here to fill in the gaps, because I'm not an expert in the legislative process for getting approval. It's more in my experience, having been an active member of the North Dakota Public Health Association for 11 years, being very much immersed with local public health units and working with them, and then also being responsible for training up Master of Public Health students here from NDSU. I see a combination of, one, our MPH graduates are taking positions at Sanford and Essentia more than in public health. And the reason is because there are jobs there and they get paid better. And although I am fine that they are offering their skills to those entities are only tangentially, delivering public health to our state. So I have a burden to see more of our students incentivized to take up work in local public health or state, but just public health, formal public health, maybe I'll put it that way. So what we have, the Public Health Association has approved a resolution this summer at our meeting, which included the following statement. And I'll just put it in the chat just because it's something that we did work up to try and be clear on. That a North Dakota Public Health Workforce Loan Repayment Program be established for individuals who have earned a master's or doctorate in public health degree from one of North Dakota's accredited public health programs, are certified in public health, and have a practice location in a North Dakota local or state public health organization. So just a couple of comments, and then I'll just turn it over to conversation. So we have a huge turnover in local public health leadership presently. We have a generation of heroes who have carried public health in North Dakota for anywhere from 20 to 40 years, many of whom are now on the brink of retiring. I would also add that the COVID experience has pushed some of them to be even more proactive in pursuing that because of how the experience has been for them. And so we desperately need an influx of talented and motivated young professionals committed to public health in North Dakota to assume this work. And that's not to question the quality of the persons out there who are in line to take on some of these roles, but it's to say we need more. And so given the fact that their salary would be lower, that in many cases it might mean moving to a county, which is not a place that they had grown up in. So they would perhaps need to, currently Jamestown is looking, Central Valley is looking for a new administrator, and I've been pushing my graduates to consider applying. And they're like, well, I don't want to leave Fargo. Well, let's make it more incentivizing, both on a professional level, but also a financial level for them to make that consideration. And then furthermore, it's a way of incentivizing individuals who choose to earn their degrees in North Dakota, and thereby, I'm sure many of you see the strong connectivity between our public health department here at the university and public health practice across the state. So it would continue to reinforce that. And then finally, we'd like to have standards that are commensurate with what the medical professions do in terms of a loan repayment program. So that means earning a degree, that means being licensed, and that means having a place to serve. And so we've also tried to incorporate that into this so that it meets equal rigor to what the more service delivery type healthcare professional loans look like. That's my recommendation. I would like to see it put to the legislature and be formally approved as part of our loan repayment program in parallel to, it's different, but in parallel to the current program that we have. So that's what I'd like to offer, and I welcome anybody's reactions or thoughts about that.
This is Allison. I just have a question. Is the program at NDSU the only accredited public health program?
No, UND has one also.
Okay.
Daryl?
So I totally support this concept as well, but I'm curious. In your statement, it says a public health locale. Are you thinking, Mark, more about recommending for rural areas to help clarify that? Because I didn't see rural in.
No, it wasn't stated. We could add that. So I think that's probably more critical for sure.
Well, again, I don't know what your intent was, so I don't want to change the direction that you guys were going, but I just wanted for clarification.
Yeah, no, that would certainly be a part of the spirit of it. Yeah.
The challenge with just putting rural in there is there are some health units that are district. And so unless you'd consider, because like we're a district of 8, and we have 7 rural counties in Dickinson being not as rural. So that would be the only challenge there in a region like us or Upper Missouri or Minot or whatever. So just to think about that. And then I'll turn it over to Kristen in just a second. I do want to echo that there are now only about 7 of us administrators left that have at least 10 years or more in. It has been a mass exodus. So anything we can do. And then I'll turn it over to Kristen.
Okay. So and maybe someone, I don't know if it's Kaylee or someone can kind of maybe do the research for us as we talk this through. In some of the other programs, I don't think we specify in the creation of the program that we give preference to rural, but I think that that's something that we've done in more of the rule and how we pick between candidates is, their HPSA score versus, different things like that, so that we are rewarding those who are going to areas that have a much harder time filling the positions, and they're serving a population that is already underserved. So I think that's one way that we can kind of address the rural without having to spell it out in the initial kind of the law piece of it. I think, some of the things that we need to think about is how many openings do we have currently for public health professionals in the state of North Dakota? Could we possibly through HRMS find out what's the average time to fill one of those positions? Are they able to do that? I think some of these things help to sell the thing. Everybody knows that workforce is a problem. And I think one of the challenges that we're going to have this session is selling, they're going to say, how do you pick winners and losers? Someone's going to say it that way, right? So they're going to say, why should we reward this one industry, for lack of a better term, and not the other 700 that are also in absolute dire straits right now? The state radio has people who are, and like Department of Homeland Security have a ton of people who are on the cusp of retiring. Everybody is looking at this cliff coming at them. And so those are going to be the questions that we have to be prepared to answer. And then, how many would we want to award? How much per award? All of those things have to be discussed. And so I think we can have that conversation to really try and flesh this out and create kind of the bones around it. But I think, what we've done sometimes in the past is we've taken a current program and just added another group that's eligible, but we don't ever increase the size of the pot of money. And so now you've got more people, competing for the same dollars, but selling a whole new program is much more difficult. So often what they'll do is they'll add them as eligible this year and then ask for more money next year, because now I can show you that I got 700 applications for 10 awards and say that obviously there's a need and that there's desire for this program. It is inadequately funded. Now help us fund it. So I think there's, kind of a couple ways we can get at this, but I think we need to be prepared for a pretty giant pushback on this. I don't think it's going to be something that people are like, awesome, I agree. And not because they don't think that they're worthy or that there is a problem. It's how do we say yes to this and no to the other industries that would love the same type of concept?
Thank you. I'm going to comment to that in just a minute, but I'm going to first go to Missy and then Dirk.
Yeah, my question was similar to Kristen's. I was just curious if there were numbers available. How many state public health people do we have across the state? How many openings do we have? How many retirements? Just so that we can look at an objective needs versus, we know that we have a workforce issue. So if you could get those numbers, and I think that gives us a better idea, because Kristen's absolutely right. I mean, there's needs across the board. So just to have some data, people are going to want the data.
Thank you. We can maybe work with Kelly on that, Mark. She's good at sending out queries to public health and include the state health department in that.
Did you say Kaylee?
Kelly Nagel. Mm-hmm. Dirk?
Curious, and maybe Kelly or Kaylee might know this, but in our other loan repayment programs, I don't know that we specify that they have to be from a North Dakota institution. And so that might be another thing that I guess we'd want to look at, because is the purpose getting trained professionals in public health serving our communities, or is it to also include them serving through the degree programs of UND and NDSU?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was noting. The purpose of the programs are to actually get into practice here in North Dakota. And so we don't specify that they actually attend a North Dakota university. And then the other thing is that was noted, that's a difference in our loan repayment program, was the specification of the degree. Like the Masters of Public Health would really limit the workforce need. And so I guess I would suggest or recommend that the level of award be provided based on the advanced degree, like if it's a bachelor's degree versus PhD, whatever it is, and then it be open to whatever public health science degree that is needed.
And I think Kelly is echoing, besides nurses, which is what everybody starts thinking about with public health or administrators, a big gap is environmental health specialists and such. So maybe we also query DEQ to see if they have a shortage of environmental health specialists. But I'm going to go back to a comment in just a minute after Dr. Wiebe.
Yeah, just a quick, Mark, you mentioned that, but I might have missed it. So who is doing that, issuing that resolution, and what is going to happen to this resolution? Is it like with the intent that it will go for a legislator who will sponsor something and appropriate some money for that purpose?
So the resolution is just a statement made by the North Dakota Public Health Association members. The title of the resolution is North Dakota Public Health Resolution to Strengthen Public Health in North Dakota. And this is one of 4 requests that the Public Health Association is making. So one would be for the governor to recognize various public health days, which he has done for the most part. A second would be to revisit the Public Health Code of Ethics, which guides practice and seems to have been sorely misunderstood over the last few years. So anyway, it's one of several, and this will be converted into a kind of policy brief, which will then allow for a conversation with legislators in the legislative session. So it's not one specific issue. And as with any association, it has no authority on its own. It's simply a way of saying this group of association members are in agreement about something, and therefore it carries the weight of a large number of people having agreed on it. So that's all.
Thank you. Tracy.
Jerry, I think me and you are probably kind of on the same thought. The one suggestion, just for discussion, that I would throw out there would be, I have a PhD in epi, so I'm a number cruncher, and so that might be of less value to a rural public health department than, say, somebody with a community health degree in maternal child health. And so I'm just saying that it's more of it's not just placing an MPH person in a thing, but also maybe in areas where they might be of most value. Like you with a bigger health department might need someone like me versus a smaller one. So just food for thought.
Thanks, Tracy. I want to go back to the comment that Kristen made, which I think would maybe be best steps for this going into this biennium. And I think we can add this as part of our November discussion, because legislation's coming really fast. So maybe we can add that too. But I like the idea that even if we try to incorporate it into an existing program that public health in general, like nurse or whatever, if we can at least get it to that baby step first, that public health would be looked at in those categories, then maybe that would give us the next 2 years to get it going to possibly be another part of a bigger category. So, I mean, again, I think this is long overdue, but you're also right in the fact that there's lots of groups needing people. So, we'll bring this I think the next step will be to bring this for further discussion to the November meeting, and then figure out if we want to add it to the current loan repayment program in some facet, or do we want to do a bigger thing, adding that new detail? So what are your thoughts on that?
I think if we were to add it to what we will need to figure out what is the one that it seems to fit in the best. I think that's going to be one of our hardest things, because, an MPH is not a nurse. So adding it to the nurse one doesn't make sense, but sometimes public health, you see the tie and, it's just going to be like, what's the right spot? If we're going to do that, there's another school of thought that I thought of as you started talking was maybe you do introduce it as a standalone bill with the knowledge that maybe the compromise will be to roll it into a different one and it can be amended that way. And maybe you start with it as I just was trying to think through, like, how do we not get it killed in the first 2 minutes? Like, how do we so I'm trying to think of how you can structure this to be the most effective if this is something that we all agree is what we want to do.
So I know, Mark, you had your hand up, but I think if we can bring this to the November meeting as well, and maybe in that time, or the end of October, November meeting, whatever that meeting may be. But in that meantime, we can work with Kelly to find out a survey, not just from local public health, but state health department, maybe categories might be another thing, like how many environmental health is a huge gap as well as nurses, and as well as these. I mean, there's huge gaps everywhere. But maybe we'll also see if Dave Glott's group would want to, for DEQ, because that would also be an environmental health group that is pulled into the picture as well. So will that work, I think, for the group to add that for the next meeting, and then be able to figure out what we need for legislation on that time frame as well? Anybody opposed to that? Somebody had their hand up. Mark, still?
Well, yeah, I'm supportive of that. If we as a committee here can clarify who will do that homework prior to the meeting. You've mentioned Kelly. Is she being asked to do that, or is there others who should be involved? So we have a clear, report to bring to the council to address some of the questions brought up today. How would you recommend that happen prior, so that we don't have to come to them, so that we avoid coming to the meeting with only, very limited new added value to the
So I just recommended Kelly, and you can speak up, just because she's good at sending out, but Tracy's group also does, they send out these call tracks or whatever. Kelly, what is your suggestion?
Well, I was just going to ask Dirk if HRMS would be able to provide me some information, at least for DQ and the Public Health Division. And then obviously I can work with local public health to get information from them.
Kelly, I do think that HRMS would have the information for, public health. I would also consider maybe behavioral health, the behavioral health team. They do public health work as well. So there might be a little broader group that we could consider as public health. But for any state team members, they would have that information. But when you get to the local level, then we'd have to reach out to the locals to provide it.
Okay.
I think the other group we could query out is our tribal public health. They too, struggle with, and I don't know how that works with loan repayment. But I know that they too are having trouble trying to get people to work in their public health units. And so when I say public health, they're kind of different than what we are, but they do have public health people.
Kaylee, just a clarification question. If a nurse was to take a position in a local public health department, would he or she be eligible for the loan repayment program under the nursing category?
The individual has to be working in a behavioral health capacity. So if they're doing some type of behavioral health roles or duties, then yes, but otherwise, no.
And the other caveat too, Kaylee, is that they have to be providing direct services, correct?
Correct. Yep. They would have to be doing direct patient care.
And those two words at least could be maybe added if we have to, have them be a category. Dr. Wiebe?
I have just a question back to that statement, Mark, that the association is providing.
I'm sorry, I have a student that needs to start a makeup exam at 11. I'm sorry, if I can we take a 3-minute stretch break, Sherry? Because I don't want to disregard Dr. Wiebe's question, but I also feel bad to just slip away just when you mentioned my name.
Well, I don't know if we can officially take a break, but we can come back to you when you come back.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other comments regarding this? So, I mean, even if the idea that we could mesh in some of the words for public health that they would fit in nurse category, that it wouldn't have to be necessarily behavioral health. It would be maybe, or local public health, or it could be something like that. If this doesn't go, if it dies real quickly, maybe we can incorporate some of that wording as well. Other thoughts on any of that? Boy, you're fast. Okay, you may go back. I stalled as long as I could.
Apologize. Okay, Dr. Wiebe, did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, it is in reference to the statement that, or the proposed resolution. And it is more very specific in a way that you have to have earned a master's or a doctorate in public health plus certified in public health. And for full disclosure, I sit on the board that provides the certification in public health, but I'm just saying that it eliminates the group of public health professionals and will not allow them to benefit from such program unless they become certified. I mean, I love it because you are asking for certified in public health. But on the other hand, my other hat is that, well, this will restrict the supply of public health professionals.
Yeah, point well taken.
All right, anything else on all of that? Okay, so that will be our second agenda item for November, because these are both deal with legislation and trying to figure out next steps with that. Okay, I think Dr. Wiebe, you spoke a little bit about the Health Council's role in being the healthiest state in North Dakota. Again, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that agenda item, or that will be incorporated more into the November discussion. So any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think it would be good to kind of expand on the discussion in November and bring ideas or thoughts of how, you know, that collaboration and work could happen as kind of like, so for the last year and a half, at least since the time I started, we've been focusing on COVID response, and now COVID is unwinding. Of course, then we were working on the integration, Department of Health, Department of Human Services, and now as this now is behind us, that's when we will start looking and operationalizing the strategic plan for health, as well as all the goals of having the state to become the healthiest state. So that's where kind of like our discussion would be very fruitful in November, as well as we can start thinking of how we can leverage the expertise, the knowledge that all the council members bring, in addition to our expertise in health and human services.
Thank you. That's going to be a good segue for that. Part of the discussion of the meeting frequency, we'll kind of determine that more after our November meeting. But like I said, if we are going to progress with this group and define more roles, then I think we should have more consistent meetings that are put on the calendar so that people don't have to worry about what they're free or not free. Understanding that there may be a time we have to reschedule if lots of things are happening, but we'll try to bring that up and then try to get those set a little better going forward in 2023. The last agenda item is an update from you, Dr. Wiebe.
Okay, thank you, Sherry, and thank you for the Health Council and kind of like including us on the agenda to provide a brief update. And I'll try to be as focused and brief as possible. First, I'll just kind of reflect on some of the operations that I mentioned on COVID operations. And now as, you know, the feds are starting to unwind various activities and response aspects of COVID. So is the department, where we are trying to unwind or kind of like go back to some kind of like normalcy where COVID could be treated or reacted to as an endemic situation, much like the flu or some other endemics. So this is in the process. That's from operations side. From organizational aspect, I'll reflect a little bit on the integration with or between Department of Health and Department of Human Services. So it's been 36 days since the official existence of the Department of Health and Human Services. So far, things are going very well, and it is important to put it in perspective where the majority of our team members did not really see any change. They are still doing their daily work. They are interacting with our citizens. They are providing the services. Almost 99% are still reporting to the same supervisor There are only very few that had some changes, whether in org structure or in whom they are reporting to. And this has been going very well. Everyone is really very optimistic and looking forward to the opportunity when the team comes together, as well as provide services in better way or higher quality or easier path to our citizens. So this is going very well. So a couple items that are kind of taking the bulk of our time and will in the next several months. One is budget. So as you would imagine, Department of Health and Human Services has the biggest budget. It is on the realm of 5 billion with a B. So that requires a lot of meetings, a lot of resources. A lot of our team members and fiscal are putting hundreds of hours, even thousands of hours in making sense of all the budget and where we see the growth in the future. This also is kind of like the precursor for the next legislative session starting in January, and that's another busy time for the department that will kind of continue till the end of April. We are actively looking at various ways to, whether it is changes or legislation that will help or assist with our legislators. So then we are confident that better services or more services are provided to our citizens. So that will occupy our time probably for the next 6 months. So that's in kind of like brief terms what we have been doing. And I'm open for any additional questions if you have any.
Allie.
Dr. Wiebe, I know it was kind of a question last session. Is DHHS doing a unified budget, or is the Public Health Division a separate budget?
No, that's a good question. So, and that is sometimes it's changing by the day. But so far, because it is a huge budget, the thought would be is to have two budgets, but having medical services as separate, where public health or what used to be health, Department of Health is integrated within the bigger budget.
Okay, thank you.
Kristen.
Thanks, Dr. Wiebe. Knowing that it's only been, you said 36 days or whatever, I know that there's not a lot yet, but have we found any kind of wins already that you guys have been able to celebrate? Like, hey, this is something that's really caused that we've been able to gain a bunch of efficiency with this, or, you know, from a customer perspective, or even from an internal perspective, some of those wins from the merger?
You know, there are multiple aspects that we think that we are leveraging strength that existed within these two departments. I think that maybe the quickest example that comes to mind is related to communication. So Department of Health had already established, you know, a robust communication platform as well as social media, and they have really strong presence in that realm. And that's whether internal or external communication. Department of Human Services, prior to the integration, they were not having as big of a robust communication platform. And now as we are kind of like coming together, so we are leveraging the existence in social media and this robust communication platform, and we brought human services to be all together as one team. I am sure that I'm missing many other examples, but maybe that's could be the topic for November. So then we can capture maybe at least 3 or 4 examples. And
I would imagine you're going to get that question quite a bit come January. And so I would start making a list so that you have it ready to be like, here are a couple things that ended up being awesome, outcomes.
Yes, and I see Dirk raised his hand. I'm sure he has multiple examples that he just can share off his head.
Yes. Yeah, of course. I would say that one of the biggest opportunities is just the ability to share data. I think that was a roadblock previously. And so as an integrated agency, there is some room for efficiency there and navigating through that process and making sure we're having one data source instead of 5 different data sources. So that was one area where I think it's been a nice growth opportunity. Emergency preparedness, there was 2 different programs that were running there. Where on the DHS side, there was one individual that was doing that in risk management, and now that can be incorporated into our emergency preparedness and response section. There's services being done by, for example, our incident command process or our DOC process, where they can help either hospitals or facilities, and the DHS legacy DHS team didn't know that, and they were able to quickly stand up and provide assistance when there was gap staffing needed for life safety skills and transition center. So it's been one of those things where the enormous amount of services provided across the entire agency, you find and learn more and more each day. And but there has been active growth, and honestly, just even being able to serve with people like Jessica, Pam, and Caprice as executive directors, there's been a lot of growth, personal and professional growth that I've gotten just from being able to talk to them on a more regular basis. So to me, it's been a nice success and probably has gone a lot smoother than I thought. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, we knew there'd be growing pains, but we hoped that there would at least be some payoff for that pain. So it sounds like you're able to find some of those. Good.
Thank you. By the way, Mark, thank you for typing up all the minutes, especially when they can get a lot of words. A lot. So thank you for trying to keep up with that, and Miranda for getting them sent out. So thank you guys.
I have to defer all your thanks to Miranda. She does
Okay.
the minutes. We can put our heads together after the fact. So I don't deserve any credit.
Okay.
I'll take it. I feel
Okay,
better right
well,
now.
thank you. Because I know doing minutes, I would rather be president any day than be
I am
secretary.
taking it, but hers are the official, and then for the most part. So thank
Well,
you,
good
Miranda.
job, you guys. Thank you. Appreciate all your hard work. Does anybody else have anything else that they want to bring up, or any topics that we want to bring forth for November? Anybody have anything else to say? You're going to get a little bit of time back from your morning.
Move to adjourn.
All right. Is there a second? Nobody else wants to adjourn?
I'll second. I'll second that. And also add my appreciation for really productive, candid conversations on a variety of important issues. So appreciate it.
Great job, everybody. It's a pleasure to work with you, and kind of fun to get to know some of you better. And we got good things we're going to try to do going forward. So anybody opposed to adjourning? Otherwise, we will send you a date sometime the end of October, 1st of November. Yes?
If you're going to make a motion to adjourn, you at least have to take a voice vote.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay. Everybody that wants to adjourn, say yes.
Aye.
Yay.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. Thank you, Allison, for keeping me in line, because somebody has to. All right, you guys. Thank you, and have a great rest of the day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.